Hello everyone. Thank you for clicking on my channel. Here, we dive into family conflicts and the challenges that come with them. If you've ever experienced something similar, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And don't forget to like the video to support the channel's growth. If there are any mistakes or areas for improvement, feel free to share your feedback in the comments. I truly appreciate you being here and listening. Now let me set the stage. They said blood is thicker than water. But what happens when that blood turns cold? When betrayal comes not from enemies, but from those who once tucked you in at night? This is a story of loyalty tested, a legacy divided, and a family torn apart by the choices they never thought they'd have to make. One heir left behind, one secret buried deep, and one decision that will change everything. This is the forgotten heir. He gave them everything. Ethan Monroe wasn't born into the Monroe family, but you'd never know it. Adopted at just 6 years old, he wore the Monroe name like armor. While the biological children traveled the world, chased dreams, and made mistakes, Ethan stayed. He studied hard, earned his MBA, and became the quiet force behind the Monroe family business, Monroe and Company, a real estate empire rooted in trust, tradition, and legacy. He never asked for more than a seat at the table. But then, just like that, it was gone. It started with a phone call. No warning, no meeting, just cold, corporate language from a voice that didn't even belong to a Monroe. Effective immediately, Mr. Ethan Monroe's role as executive director has been dissolved. Please direct all future correspondence to Mr. Nathan Monroe. Nathan, the youngest biological son, the one who once crashed his father's car into the lake, the one who never even finished college, the one who'd called Ethan brother, with half a smirk since they were kids. At first, Ethan thought it was a mistake, maybe a miscommunication, maybe paperwork. But when he showed up at the office, his key card didn't work. He waited 3 hours in the lobby. No one came down. Not his mother, not his father, not even Nathan. Security escorted him out without eye contact. His desk already emptied. His nameplate already gone. And just like that, 17 years of loyalty vanished in a breath. No explanation. No thank you. No goodbye. Back home, the silence was louder than the betrayal. He sat at the dining table, staring at the family portrait on the wall, his younger self smiling between a father who once called him my greatest gift, and a mother who used to kiss his forehead goodnight. He remembered late nights reviewing contracts, holidays spent on conference calls, birthdays missed because the company comes first. He wasn't just an employee. He was a son, a brother, or at least he thought he was. What had he done wrong? Was he too good, too loyal, or was he never truly part of them to begin with? Outside, the city lights flickered like broken promises. Inside, Ethan felt something unraveling inside him, the kind of ache that doesn't come from loss, but from realizing you were never truly seen. And that's when something inside him shifted. This wasn't just about a job. It was about truth, about legacy, about finding out why the people who once embraced him had chosen to forget. He wouldn't beg. He wouldn't cry. He would uncover the truth, even if it meant tearing the whole Monroe legacy down, brick by brick. The betrayal burned deeper with each passing day. Ethan tried to push it away, bury it under long walks, sleepless nights, and unanswered texts to his parents. But the silence that screamed louder than words ever could. Something didn't sit right. This wasn't just a reshuffle. It wasn't about business. It felt personal, calculated, like a puzzle where he was the final piece that no longer fit. And Ethan, being who he was, needed answers. So he did what he always did. He went back to the source. Late one evening, long after the Monroe and Company building had gone dark, Ethan returned, not as an executive, but as a ghost with unfinished business. A janitor he'd once helped put his kid through school let him in through the back. No security, no cameras, just Ethan and the quiet hum of fluorescent lights in the legal archives room. He sifted through old files, board meeting minutes, dusty ledgers no one had touched in years. He wasn't sure what he was looking for until he found it. A single manila folder, unlabeled but dated 10 years ago. Inside, a revised company charter, marked confidential, signed by his father, David Monroe. The language was dense, technical, but Ethan understood it like the back of his hand. One line stopped his breath cold. In the event of succession or leadership dispute, final decision-making authority shall fall to the Monroe bloodline. Adopted individuals, while recognized legally, shall not hold claim to executive inheritance. There it was, in ink, in law, the clause that erased him. It wasn't a recent decision. It wasn't Nathan's idea. It wasn't even about performance. It was a quiet betrayal, a ticking time bomb planted a decade ago, waiting for the right moment to go off. Ethan stumbled back, the papers shaking in his hand. All those years, all that work, every sacrifice, every late night, every lost relationship, had all been leading to this moment. A future that was never truly his. A seat at a table built for show. His removal wasn't an accident. It was a plan. They had always intended to push him out. The only question now was, why wait until now? And what exactly were they trying to protect? As he stood there, heart pounding, staring at the lies written in legal jargon, Ethan realized one thing. If they had hidden this from him, what else were they hiding? Whatever it was, he would find it. Because the truth wasn't just his revenge, it was his right. The truth had a taste, bitter, metallic, and unforgettable. After finding the hidden clause, Ethan couldn't sleep. His thoughts spiraled. If the company charter had been rewritten a decade ago, long before any tensions with Nathan, then the betrayal had roots much deeper than a corporate reshuffle. There had to be more. There always was. He needed to go back to the beginning. He drove 4 hours to the dusty little town where he was adopted, the same courthouse where his name changed from unknown male, infant to Ethan Monroe. He hadn't been there in years. The clerk's eyes widened slightly when he slid over his ID and requested access to sealed records. A quiet nod, a few forms, and then a thick, yellowing envelope. Inside were the original adoption papers, medical records, social worker notes. And then he saw it. A letter, unopened, tucked in the back. It was addressed to his adoptive parents, his father, David Monroe. The seal was broken. Someone had read it. The contents were simple, yet world-shattering. In light of the sensitive nature of the biological parents' identities, we recommend permanent discretion. The child is linked to the Carrington family, a known rival to Monroe Enterprises. Disclosure could result in reputational damage or legal conflict. Ethan read the sentence 3 times. Then again. Then again. Carrington. It was a name he'd only ever heard whispered during tense boardroom meetings. Ruthless. Old money. A family that had once nearly bought Monroe and Company during a hostile takeover attempt. His father had always treated the Carringtons as if they were poison, untouchable, untrustworthy. And now, Ethan was one of them. His entire identity unraveled in a single moment. He wasn't just adopted. He was hidden, rebranded, a sleeping threat inside the very empire he had once called home. He remembered every awkward silence when he asked about his birth parents growing up, every forced smile, every deflection. They weren't protecting him. They were protecting themselves. If anyone found out, it wouldn't just be personal, it'd be public. A scandal. The Monroe name would be dragged through the mud. Their stock could plummet. Trust would erode. It would be war. Ethan staggered out of the courthouse, the paper still in his hand. He wasn't sure what hurt more, the betrayal or the truth. But one thing was clear now. He had power. Not the kind he asked for, but the kind no one saw coming. And for the first time in weeks, Ethan didn't feel lost. He felt dangerous. Because knowing who he really was, that changed everything. The revelation didn't just haunt Ethan, it ignited him. He couldn't sit still. Not after learning that his entire life had been a cover-up, that he'd been born a Carrington, raised a Monroe, and used as a pawn in a decades-long corporate feud. It was no longer about business. This was personal. For the first time, Ethan stopped chasing his place in the Monroe family and started chasing the truth about the Carringtons. He began with the name on the medical record, Elena Carrington, his biological mother. It was the only detail not blacked out in the file. A quick online search led to a sea of articles: socialite, philanthropist, missing. Declared legally dead 2 decades ago after a car crash, but no body was ever found. Weird. Then he found it. A blog post from a forgotten news archive, written just weeks before her disappearance. It quoted Elena saying she was expecting a child and stepping away from the Carrington board indefinitely. A child. Him. Ethan's stomach turned. The timing matched. Everything did. But then, why give him up? Why leave? Why erase herself? Unless she didn't choose to. Ethan dug deeper, requesting legal documents through obscure channels, calling in favors from old contacts at Monroe HQ. What he found made his blood run cold. Just weeks after Elena's announcement, the Monroes had filed a lawsuit against the Carringtons, claiming breach of contract, intellectual theft, and corporate sabotage. It wasn't just business. It was war. And Ethan was right at the center of it. Buried in an old court transcript, he found a sealed affidavit from a former Monroe executive. One line stood out like a scream in the silence. We advised Mr. Monroe to ensure the child would never be traced back. If the boy knew who he really was, everything we built could collapse. The words hit Ethan like a brick. His father, his mentors, his family, they'd erased a woman, stolen a baby, and rewritten history just to protect a name on a building. And worst of all, they did it with calm precision. This wasn't a panic move. It was strategy. He looked at the old photo of Elena from the article. Soft smile, tired eyes, one hand resting on her stomach. He felt something unexpected grief. Not just for her, but for the life he never knew. The story he was never allowed to write. And then rage. For how calculated the Monroes had been. For how they'd made him doubt his worth, his belonging, even his instincts. They never intended to love him. They intended to use him. Now Ethan had a choice. He could bury it all and keep pretending, or he could burn it down. And as the pieces finally fit together, he knew exactly what he had to do. Ethan stood in the Monroe boardroom, the same place where he once fought to prove his worth. Only this time, he wasn't looking for validation. He came with the truth, and the receipts to burn down their carefully built legacy. Across the long, polished table sat Gerald Monroe, his voice as cold and composed as ever. What exactly are you hoping to gain by digging up ancient history? Ethan didn't flinch. This isn't history, Gerald. This is my life. Stolen, silenced, and rewritten by you. He tossed a thick folder onto the table. Inside were documents, birth records, sealed affidavits, suppressed financial transactions. All roads led back to one truth. Ethan was born Ethan Carrington, and the Monroes had orchestrated his disappearance from the Carrington legacy before he ever took his first breath. Gerald's face didn't move, but his silence was louder than any denial. Ethan scanned the room. Board members, Monroe cousins, advisors. Every one of them had profited off the lie. And now they watched him with unease, as if seeing him clearly for the first time. Your empire, Ethan said, voice steady but laced with emotion, was built on stolen blood. I was never your heir. I was your insurance policy, your pawn in a war I never signed up for. One of the older board members shifted in his seat. Another looked away. Gerald finally spoke. So what now? You want your name back? Your seat on the board? A press conference to play the victim? Ethan shook his head. No, I don't want a damn thing from you. I came here to return your name. He pulled a chain from around his neck and dropped the Monroe family ring onto the table. It landed with a cold, metallic clink, the sound of a door closing. I'm not a Monroe, and I'm not a Carrington either, Ethan continued. Both families treated me like a strategy, but I'm done being someone's move. He turned to leave, but paused at the door. I'm starting my own company. From scratch. No legacy, no lies. Just truth. And if that threatens you, maybe you should have built your empire on something real. No one stopped him as he walked out. Not Gerald, not the advisors, not the family that once raised him. Outside, the air felt sharper, lighter. For the first time, Ethan wasn't carrying anyone else's name, just his own. He didn't know what came next. He didn't have a detailed plan. But he had something far more powerful, clarity. He had faced down a machine that was built to erase him, and walked away on his own terms. And in a world obsessed with legacy, maybe the bravest thing a man could do was choose none at all. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another thrilling story. See you in the next one.